the way you grow in your sibling structure, you actually, learn a pattern. And then the way it develops, it opens you to other subtleties in the pattern when you become a parent. You start to know parenting, in other words, how to be a kind of leader when you become a grandparent, and so on. So there's the basic sibling pattern. I knew leadership because I have an older brother, and then he left. I had a younger brother, so I was promoted, and then I got kids. Now, when I got promoted by my younger brother, I was in somebody else's structure. When I got kids, it was my structure. So in a way, you become an entrepreneur, and things like this.
But when you say it becomes more subtle as you progress in life, does it add to the complexity?
Yeah.
And
In other words, now I could be a grandfather. I know how to manage a father that I was been, in an independent system or in somebody else's system. I know much more complexity because I've been in each role through family structures. So I know a lot about system through family structure. And today I actually come to be able to play a role which is a grandfather role for people of a certain generation, for people who are still who are in the 50s, I'm still in the, for people who were in the 20s, I'm much more the grandfather role. And usually they have an easier time with grandfathers, sometimes not. So some freak out because they remind them of their grandfathers. Some reconcile with their grandfathers because they realize their grandfather had another dimension. And some take everything I say because they had a terrific grandfather.
Is it easier as a grandfather than as a dad?
Yeah. So I have a much easier time with the younger generation than people in the 50s. If they're in the 30s, it's almost a breeze.
And there's a complementary reason for that. It's people younger understand the way you think way better than people that are older. Because they're not...
Yeah, my thinking is influenced by network family from the start, which was rare. But still, when they see me, you already have your plugins that start going and stuff like that. So, and for instance, in the fundamentals, I can be quite an asshole and stuff like that, or even an organization. When you start, they do everything to kill it from the start, and then they start getting it, and then it's easier. But you need, alignment, energy in the beginning, and I'm not going to align to that. The whole point is they align to something else. The realignment period, you need to put a whole mess of energy. Once it's done, then you flow. So that is easier if you're a grandfather than if you're a father. Easy.
Much less drama there.
Yeah.
Accumulated drama.
Yeah. And sometimes it's interesting because maybe that's why I do things with 60 to 90 people. Because if I do it only with the executive team, I'm the father. If I do it with the next level, I'm the grandfather. I light it with these guys, and they start shoving the executive team. So it's a good way of raising a fire. On the rest, so they don't move. So it's the first time I actually developed any conference on this. Because I never talked about it. And so, as I was talking, I was sort of, different images were coming in, so I had no idea what I said. So.
No way, I have the video, I can send it to you.
I'll need to listen to it, maybe I'll learn something. But I had given some thought to it in different points. I was just connecting the dots of a lot of different experiences. But I was thinking you would want to go on with that for this because we didn't talk about this issue. It's recorded. Oh, it's recorded. we haven't.
Let me just check it now. You made me record it conscious. Yes, it's recorded.
Yeah. Because that's kind of weird stuff. In other words, it's looking at the constellation in you to understand the different roles or the different potentials you have in different systems today.
One thing that comes to mind as a question when you mentioned that is, how do you look at that? I mean, for me, when I started looking at that, whenever I found resonances between patterns, I would get so excited. But whenever one of those resonances turned out not to be that way because some information came, I would get so disappointed. So I was so mentally into matching those two patterns in a precise, Cartesian way. And the question is, what kind of an outlook should you have while looking for these resonances between your inner experiences or your family experiences and your outer, say, professional relationships or mature relationships?
I don't know if I resonate really much with the question. In other words, I don't look for patterns. I try to understand what doesn't work in the situation.
Okay.
Or what works.
Okay.
For instance, I can quite relate with peer-to-peer relationship with anybody, almost any age.
Mm.
Because I have pretty much that pattern. Being raised sometimes in boarding school with a pack of people. Nobody was leader or not leader or whatever, etc. Got together and what we did together is brother relationship in my case, my sister. So it's the peer relationship thing. So now, what's the potential in it? It's huge. In other words, I meet a boss, I don't look up.
Yeah.
I look directly. I meet a subordinate, I don't look down. I look directly. I meet an assistant. So this whole peer relationship background, based on the fact that in a way I was abandoned or felt abandoned, parents were playing a role, can be seen psychologically speaking, oh, poor kid, etc., actually has huge potential. So at some point, I was trying to figure out what makes me different or what gave me these skills eventually, and I figured it out. I said, okay, there's potential there, let's use it. Let's be clear when I see a boss, that if he comes at me in a boss way, I don't have to play the role he expects. I can play the role that I have been sort of tailored into, and so on. So it's more to reinforce or compensate, because there's always some potential in every pattern. To use what the pattern brings you. In other words, and to understand the different parts of it.
And it's moving out of this victim mentality, right? So
Yeah.
if it's
Any pattern is useful.
Yeah.
It's like any plugin for your computer is useful. Usually we don't use 1/10 of it. Any software. I don't know Word at all. I hardly use the same thing all the time. Sometimes I have to find out where I found something useful because I forgot. But I don't use a tenth of the potential of Word or Excel. And I still write books and books and books. Now this is, we could say, a family pattern. You don't use a tenth of it. It's got huge potential.
and what you said about being abandoned and whatever, so there's that outlook you could have, like you sort of, or you could see the
Well, I went through a lot of therapy, and I even have physical issues linked to it, and so on. But it's not a problem. It's actually my potential. Being raised in a management of the distance and keeping connection over time with people at a distance. And so it's normal to be over several countries. It's normal to travel all the time. You say, wow, you travel all the time. Now I travel as a family. We traveled as a family. We were together. That was a family. In other words, our identity is not linked to a place. It's linked to where we are together. So we can be together in a place. Somebody asked me the other day, which is your home, Paris or Bucharest? I said, wherever we are together. Well, we could even be in a third or fourth place together. We're at home. You say, oh, isn't that beautiful? Oh, it's the program.
Yeah.
We could be camping for a month on the Red Sea, and that was home because we're together. So that sort of route is a different route for most families.
And it developed the skills you have now.
Yeah, so it's capacity to travel, not to need anything, to use what you have, and to really interact with the environment wherever you are, but you know you're together, so you're safe.
How about really traumatic experiences?
I was just thinking of one, which is in one of our travels, really traumatic. But in one of our travels, at the time we went to Djerba. I don't know if you know it. It's an island off of Tunisia, where the Romans had built a road. So it's not an island anymore. It's a peninsula. It's a peninsula. And on the other side, there's a dotted line and it said ferry boat on the map. And so we decided we'd come from Egypt up the road and visit the island and then continue on to God knows where in Tunisia. Going through the island instead of going inland. And so we went to Germany, visited, and then we went to the ferry boat. And what turned out to be a ferry boat sort of big sailboats with planks put across, in which the car goes and they tie it down. And then they take off and sail for the mainland that you can't even see. And it happened to be a really, really windy day with high seas and so on and so forth. And we started freaking out. And of course, the question is, are you safe? And then they come up and say, you're out of the car because like you had to hang on the boat because of the waves and everything. It was a sandstorm, really accepting the seas. And I remember the two brothers sitting in the back and my mother and I was sitting in front, freaking out. And, it's funny because it's like she was asking my advice and I wasn't necessarily the oldest person. She looked at me and she says, what do you think is best for us? Is to stay together in the car or is to be outside and we each have a chance? And I said, let's stay together in the car. And she's okay.
That advice seeking is speaking of stuff that builds you. For your mom to ask you for advice, how old were you? So yeah, you were a kid.
Yeah.
For her to ask you for real, and what I saw in your eyes was that she was really asking for advice.
It was existential. It was on an existential level. And like she, probably on an existential level, I had to weigh the two. The two were equally, so she didn't make a choice. And so she asked my opinion. Maybe it's not, this is my opinion. And my opinion is clearly to stay together. Whatever happens, we'll be together. And I mean, you almost had to have the windshield wiper because the sea was coming out so strong. And we made it across. And second thing I remember is actually from there we drove on through the desert with sand blowing really low. You couldn't see the road anymore because the sand was and when we finally arrived, the whole bottom part of the car was like sandpaper. All the paint had gone. You couldn't step out of the car. You get your skin up.
That was in Tunis?
That was in Tunisia. We actually drove from Egypt to Paris. So we went the whole North Africa to Tunis and then took another ferry boat from Tunis to Italy, Sicily. And then up Italy all the way to Paris.
How long a trip was that?
At least 15, 20 days or something.
That was the four of you? Your mom and your two brothers?
Yes.
I just realized that you're a middle brother.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Speaking of again influences, so
It's a terrific place to be. No, you're not the last baby.
yeah.
It's central and holds the family together whenever everybody leaves the baby. And you're not the older that takes all the pressure or the ambition. Has to be perfect. The parents don't know what they're doing. So you get less attention.
Yeah.
Which may be a blessing, like everything. You can say, oh, poor me.
Yeah.
Or you can say, wow, I'm glad I didn't get the other two guys.
Yeah. It trained you.
So it trains you for independence. But everything, I mean, in the constellation is significant.
It's the issue is, and that was the question about the way you see these things. When they're your own stuff, the tendency to go into drama, it's so high to go into a victim mentality where you say, okay, I didn't get attention for my
But
class.
it's normal. In a way, it's until you learn how to accept it and use it. In other words, I mean, Freud, I think, said, if you're a parent, don't worry. Everything you do is wrong. Because at some point, the kids will look for somebody to blame, and they'll, in the history, whoever is before is going to blame. So it's the parent. You could equally say, don't worry, everything you do is great.
Yeah.
Because this is just the same two sides of the coin. And so if you do your therapy when you're 25 or 35 or 45 or 55, it's not the same therapy.
Yeah.
It's the same parents, it's the same history. But actually, you write the history where you're at. And gradually, I mean, your story changes because you're changing your way through it. And you end up saying, oh, this is great. This is what I've been using from the start. That's my program. And there's something useful. It's almost like it's a university to prepare you for the fight. It's kind of reverting back to your question. If I had it a little differently, well, if I think about it, everything would have been different. I'm sure I'm quite satisfied about the progression and the depth and the value of what I can be contributing and so on. If I hadn't done it differently, done it.
Yeah, and Sinatra used to say, it's your way. I mean, it's what pulls you towards that. You might have been efficient, more efficient in another dimension or whatever, but it's going towards what pulls you.
And any change would be at a cost, positive or negative. And also at a gain, but at a cost. And in a way, I would say the equilibrium of the cost and the gain is the one that they So why say it should have been different and at what cost? I'm not sure.
How do you feel? How did you use this knowledge and experience in raising your own kids?
I got married, I was 27. I didn't have any knowledge or a normal parent would really fish around for things. And it was pretty clear within, I don't know, 3, 4 years, 5 years that our marriage was a mistake. Of course, I wouldn't have any other way because I got the kids. So it was not a mistake, but we were not fit to grow together. So at some point, it was a good choice to go separate ways. So in a way, for my kids, I'm an absent father, which is the case of my father. So I repeated the same pattern. And obviously I can see them going through the same difficulty of having to deal with it in their own way. So I'm quite a model about being an absent father and putting my kids in the same situation, the same kind of context as I grew, with a lot of influence from the mother, totally different. They were more local all the time, but I tried to do something by taking them on a trek in Africa with cameras when they were hardly teenagers, and lots of freaking them out. International experience, 15 days living with the family in the States, working in a hotel or whatever. So I was trying to influence them in the international way. Their mother was also, raised in Greece and had some international stuff.
One thing you mentioned about, and I'm not sure I'm remembering this correctly, but there was an episode in, I think, the supermarket. Yeah? I'm getting it right. So just to finish the intro, I think it was Gabriel.
Yeah. Well, I forget the names of one of my sons. I don't know if he remembers. I don't think he remembered. I think I told him once recently about it.
So it was when he was acting out, and the response he got was you acting out. Ever since hearing that, I kind of tried to apply it in education, and it helps a lot because with kids you can't really convey information or logic.
But it's with adults too.
Yeah.
In other words, well, to tell the story just for the record, he started coming to the main cashiers to say, "Mom, I want a chocolate. I want a chocolate." And the mother said no. We're still living together at the time, and so he starts crying and stomping on his feet and then rolling on the ground. I want a chocolate, screaming and making a scene. Now, what's expected that works with the mother is she ends up buying the chocolate, so he knows it works. By making a scene, she feels like a fool, the whole public. So he's using the public against his mother. He knows how to do it. And even, adults do that by joking or whatever. If you can get the public to laugh at something in front of your boss, well, you win because the public's on your side. So at any rate, this is just strategies that we know in terms of social situations. And so obviously, when you feel you're taken hostage in this strategy, because you need to do anything else, just anything else. So the mother looked at me and said, "You're the dad, do something." And so yes, they did something, and I started saying, "I want a chocolate," and yelling and screaming and rolling on the ground, really getting to the point of having my eyes, tears at times. And so he stopped and looked at me because obviously I wasn't playing the expected complementary role. So that kills his strategy. And everybody's looking at me and thinking, so maybe I would get a chocolate. And so when he stopped, I stopped, and he started again. So I started again. And so he stopped again, and longer, so I said, "Are we done? Can we move on?" And he got up and he stopped. And I don't know if he ever did the same thing again. Now, this is really coaching strategy. It's paradoxical strategy. In other words, don't accept the hostage role and do something completely crazy. And one completely crazy thing is do the same thing as the one who's taking you hostage. I would say in the supermarket, everybody should have gotten down on the floor and saying, "We want a chocolate." That would have really freaked
Like a flash mob of people screaming for chocolate. That's one traumatic childhood experience. You don't want chocolate anymore in your life.
but it's funny.
And it's extremely effective. Extremely
Yeah, because you're not moving into the expected scenario of hostage taking in this case. I call that hostage taking. I mean, some people in the group may say, "Well, I have a question to ask, but I'm not sure it's very good." I usually say, "Well, don't ask it." You know? Because you're supposed to say, "Well, go on, go."
There's no such thing as not a good question.
And be a savior. So I'll hook you by playing victim, and you'll be my savior. And that's a good introduction. So I play the asshole. I say, "Don't ask it." I'll try to think of a stupid answer. You know? And that reveals the hook.
Yeah, and it kind of makes you present as a hooker or as a fisher in a way. If you get that kind of a response, it kind of wakes you up a bit.
And it can be a joke, and everybody laughs. You know, so it's not. But it sort of jolts people that the usual enchaînement, the usual chain of events. It can happen differently. Now, being politically correct is actually accepting a chain of events that lead to something unhealthy.
And it's something I get out of your trainings. And one of the main reasons I keep coming back to supervision is that when I get out of there, I'm in that state where I don't. Even if I accept something, I accept a chain, a link in a chain. I accept it just because it's more efficient to do so, or it's But I'm not in that exactly. But I'm seeing it. I'm observing it. I'm kind of aware of the chain. Otherwise, after a time, you get into a chain. Okay, now I started being able to get out of it without your training. But it's so powerful. After training, it's so clear. And it's probably mainly because of the way you're modeling that type of intervention.
Now, if you want to go further, whenever you see it, do something different. Don't say, "Okay, for effectiveness," because that's an excuse to get into the change. You can accept it and give it a chocolate, but do something.
Okay.
Because that gets you, as soon as you're taking the hostage, you do it. You don't even think about it. It becomes a reflex. Then you don't need the training anymore because you're always alive to it. It becomes a different reality.
And it reconfirms whenever you use it,
because you can still, getting up from doing something different and say, "Okay, we earned the chocolate." And by the chocolate then, it's not really the issue, but it's to break the chain all the time. And then it becomes a habit. You don't need training. Because you're saying you need to revive it, because actually.
Because it gets what do you call it?
You find an excuse not to keep it awake.
I know, and maybe my excuses or what's happened in my brain is that my need to be accepted or valued or whatever understood. That's the pretext. But what lies beneath it is I want people to accept me. Exactly. To be nice to people, not challenge.
Well, it's the whole politically correct. Everybody wants to be nice, to be accepted.
Which is stupid because I realize that for me at least, wanting to be appreciated or whatever fills up my life with so many people that and interactions and so on that just don't need to be there. They're not bringing me value. They're not bringing them value. They're just I'm being okay with it.
Now, something you need to consider is maybe you'll be appreciated for doing something else.
Yes, for challenging.
Yeah, for being different, challenging, etc. You'll be refreshing, you'll be challenging, etc. And you'll be appreciated for something else. In other words, you can be appreciated for fitting in, or appreciated for challenging, or for whatever.
Yeah.
You still get appreciation.
To not feel, changing stuff in order to keep the appreciation you're getting.
Well, actually, if you fear what you call change is losing something.
Yeah.
Actually, you gain something else. There's nothing lost, nothing gained.
Is this experience you mentioned you're sometimes an asshole. No, you mentioned somebody told me that you mentioned at the beginning of your workshop that you're sometimes an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
And I precisely remember you not saying that at the beginning of my family.
Okay.
And
I don't want to say the same thing.
yeah, I know you don't have like a tape that you would press back, but I mean that thing. As I know, you pay attention on the structure and on the linguistics, and the way you set things up from the beginning. And my question is was there a reason for that?
No, this isn't just words. In other words, I say you'll be challenged. In this case, is it? I'll be an asshole. Because when you challenge, you're an asshole. The interview I got from a newspaper recently, they put in a number of questions, and one of them is you're rebellious, that the system is rebellious. Rebellious, has an image of rebellious. And it was really funny because for me, rebellious is against. In other words, it's a word that the establishment uses by saying you're not like us, therefore you're against us. I've never been rebellious. I'm just doing my own thing. I'm not doing it against the establishment. I'm doing it because I have a purpose. There's a line. I'm going towards something. And so, and actually most of my clients are about as establishment as you can get. I mean, there's an international corporation, etc. It's not like I was, living in Ibiza, being coachy and being off the grid. Come on, I'm right in the grid. Okay? So how am I rebellious? And actually, it's because I'm not doing what everybody else does. Therefore, I'm doing it against them. It's giving themselves a lot of power. Who gives a shit about them? In a way, if you're going in a certain direction, like drumming to a different beat or whatever the expression is, it doesn't mean you're trying to kill the orchestra. It means you're following another beat. Now, that got me thinking about, wow, how establishment are they? Now, in a way, I never paid much attention to what other consultants did, other coaches did, etc., etc. I don't go around seeing the providers' markets as to see what I can get from them, good ideas, etc. I've got my own good ideas. Thank you. No, I mean, in developing with my clients who are totally established, but who are searching together and developing things, but it's not against other people. Now it's totally parallel, and I haven't searched in the coaching environment. I don't read, the books of the 7 laws and the 8 rules. This and that thing. What can I get from it? How can I apply it or whatever? So totally parallel. So the word rebellion really got me. And then coming back to the word you're saying, at one point they said something about forcefulness. The need to be, do you need to be so forceful in your approach? Something like that. The word forceful was there. Now, again, I thought it was interesting because if there's anything forceful in corporations, a sort of stifling energy and it's killing the spontaneity and the motivation, get aligned. Well, get aligned. Let's all get aligned together so that we go in the same direction. What headquarters says is get aligned to what I want. And that's quite forceful, isn't it? Let's get aligned together. Cut the bullshit. In other words, we decide to what you get aligned to, and you better get aligned to it. You don't like it, well, you quit. So there's not much choice in it. It's really that forceful. And so if you want to come in, and they say they want change. And they say they've got to a limit, and they want change, and they want delegation, and they want empowerment. And so the first thing I say is, watch what you wish for, because you may get it. You want empowerment? Well, I can accompany you. The organization, you will get empowerment. But
Are you ready for it?
watch what you wish for. Because what they call empowerment is like the word, we want to empower them to
Give
do
you
what,
power.
to what we want them to use the power for, In other words, we want to keep the power of this empowerment. Come on. So if you're going to help the system change in any direction, you need to put equal energy to face the stifling energy. You need to help them blow the lid. Okay.
For a lot of time I've been thinking, why are you working with corporations? Why aren't you choosing startups and people that are more like you or more in the, And I'm realizing more and more that it's corporation needs the impact you can provide much more than startups do or whatever.
You would be surprised. The startup needed a lot. They don't want it.
Really?
No. They want to start, they don't want to finish. They don't want any structure.
Yeah, that's true.
They start up one structure, they get bought.
You're not a startup.
They sell out. They start up and sell out. It's not finished. If you want to know what a startup is in the Romanian context, is there's money out there. Okay, call it finance angels, business angels, whatever, investors. In Romania, call it Europe.
Yeah.
And the main project in most startup is to get that money. Okay. In other words, to sell to investors. It's not to do something over 50 years. It's not to deliver a product. It's to build a dream that you sell and bail out. So it's not a moneymaker. And there's principles. And it's become a principle that for the first 20 years you don't make any money. You're like, Uber or whatever. But you're going to live off money. And if you're smart enough, well, you bail out before it's killed. Because nothing proves it works. It's like Amazon or something. Nothing proves it really works on the long run. They have up and down. And so there needs to be some, it's like a pyramid of Ponzi. So long as somebody believes it's going to make money. So the first goal of a startup is to get some investors that you will use to convince other people that it's worth investing in. But the first investors will bail out with you. Okay? So the first investors know they're going to sell to. And they don't care to know if it's going to be viable. They care to know if it's going to be viable long enough for them to sell with a big they don't. So it's a big bubble. It's a myth. you have to be able to sell it well. So in Romania, it's convince Europe that you're going to do a very interesting project to get European money. The main goal is getting the money.
Not doing the project.
The project needs to look good. Okay, so you'll get people that have some kind of credibility. I've been asked by a few people, let's do a project together to get European money. They need a name. Okay. Now, if I want to look into the project, it's big like hell. Okay. But they know they need a name, and if I don't do it, they'll find somebody else. Because they have to make a really nice package so as to get the money from Europe. And of course, Europe doesn't use half the money you can give. Because all of these think they're startups. They're looking at Europe like they're looking at investors who are going to believe whatever we say. Doesn't work there. So I would say it's healthier working with a corporation that at some point or another it may have had an industrial purpose. Because a lot are becoming financial anyways. So long as they're making money, they don't care about the purpose or the cost or the sustainability, etc. So that's one of the problems. It's not sustainable either. It's going to blow up sooner or later. Don't worry. That if we can help them get sustainable before it's too late, it could be interesting.
I was thinking right now, it's probably the interest you're getting from big corporate clients now more than you were a couple of years ago might also be because of the sustainability trend, which you kind of overlap precisely on by the way you see systems.
Well, they can't hold on to their personality. They can't hold on to the young creative anymore. They can't hold to their skill anymore. I mean, when you're financial, I mean, you can have a vision and mission and want people to commit and so on and so forth. And then you have a slight downturn and you fire 10% of the people. Everybody who stays understands, okay, the commitment is one way. It's worth it. The day you want to make more money, you'll fire me. So don't ask for commitment. It's like saying you're married to me, but I'm not married to you. You know, a marriage is two ways. Come on. Okay? So you can't ask for something that you don't give. It's not sustainable. And most corporations are financially managed. They're lip service to commitment.
No, and it's becoming more and more clear that they can't go further. As you said, they're losing their people
And so they'll die.
They're all adapt or die.
Yeah. And so it becomes clear more and more for corporations that the financial logic has come to an end, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Which doesn't mean we can't make money. But it's not the purpose.
It's not the sole purpose.
Making money is called the results or an indicator of positive, achievement, etc. You deliver, added value to your life, so we have to pay you. So, how is what you deliver really huge added value? No paying for it. If you just cost cutting, you'll get cost cut and low added value personnel, low added value clients, low added value everywhere. It's all going to be redundant.
It's also a question of having the courage to move away from just profit, and it takes a lot of courage as a leader, and I think as a leadership team. I don't think a leader can do it on his own. Talking about specifically about sustainability.
Yeah.
And going
Logically, it's going to take courage to stay there.
Yes.
In other words,
Yes.
it takes a lot of courage not to go to your death. I don't understand. what it takes courage is getting out of the pack.
Yeah.
Okay? In other words, start acting differently.
Yeah.
Because everybody is going in the back. It's like pharmaceuticals or whatever. They all copy each other. And basically, if we're all doing the same thing, we must be right. But they're doing the same thing because they're copying each other. Now, is it right for that much? No, they're going down the same road, which is into a wall. It could be. Now, most corporations have common logic. And they're all reassured that it's the good one because everybody's doing it. Now, nobody has the courage of testing something different, or if you do. So the pack is still thinking, it's like investing, it's like Wall Street. If everybody's investing, we must be doing something good, until it crashes. And I say, and you call it pack behavior.
Yeah. Didn't start with the crash. It started with,
And corporations have pack behavior.
I think we all do in a way. It's exactly the kind of conversation we're having internally in my company, where the argument is, if we're not going to do it, for example, we're not buying Tesla cars, which aren't at least hybrid, and if we're not going to sell these ICE cars, somebody else will. So we're not actually helping sustainability, we're just not helping ourselves do that. But it's that kind of decision that you need to make. And you were right about not making them, but sticking to them. That's the hard part. Just, okay, I'll be sustainable. But when shit approaches the fan, to keep with that decision. And again, as you said, it's not a courageous decision necessarily, because you're just moving away from a sure death. Which, okay, is further down the line, but it's sure. Yeah, and again, I think this shift of some corporations or the business environment towards more sustainability, more humans interested, I think it's happening, and it's been happening at least since the 70s. But the rhythm is.
There's a lot of lip service, and actually, from the 70s up to now, there's more and more and more control systems.
So you would say it's control is growing.
Headquarters control on everything worldwide. Call it standardization, cost cutting, etc. More and more coming. It's been piles and piles. People that were in the 70s had time to manage. People today spend most of the time reporting. Or in meetings talking about some things, because everybody has agreed with everybody and nobody wants to take any more risks. We have discussions and discussions and discussions. People you have to consult before you can move. It's like you were talking about your friend you hired who left a big company because to get a fork, you had to sign 10 papers and consult 20 people.
Yeah.
And so more and more are actually intelligence, millennials and even others want to see the ball moving.
Yeah.
In corporations, it doesn't. It's about controlling. It's not about ruling. It's about predicting, making sure it goes where you predict it, and make sure nothing else goes anywhere else, and nobody thinks about anything else. And so it's been more and more stifling, I would say, and which is great because most of the smartest people leave it and do something else. So there's more creativity outside of big corporations today, and they try to use it. So the best way for big corporations to develop new ideas is to buy a startup.
Yeah. I think there's another way for them, the one you mentioned before, which is instead of incorporating your startups to disincorporate your startups. So when they have like a talented manager that reaches his limit within the organization, instead of stifling them any further and
No.
Just let them go.
Well, there's programs like this, but they're an exception.
Yeah.
And in reality,
And there's a lot of lip service in
Yeah.
these programs also, like they call it, I think, intrapreneurship.
yeah. Well, there's a lot of concepts here, but very often it's a good way of getting rid of somebody you don't want. In other words, in a highly centralized and controlled organization, any kind of creativity is not acceptable. Now, this is particular of controlling centralized cultures, French, imperialist cultures, etc. Name it. We're basically talking about the same countries all over the place. I mean, it's all the old imperialists are actually doing the same kind of thing as they did before. Slavery. Except they call it employees. Before they furnish the house and the food, they furnish money and they have to buy the house and the food from them. So,
Yeah, just adding a step. It's
so you're free now. You can, we pay you with money instead of giving you the goods. But you have to buy the goods from us. It's from the same corporations. So the whole thing looks like a loop of freedom. It's a good deal. And if anything's left, we'll tax it.
freedom.
And so, as I say, well, the standard of living has been going up slowly. But basically, there's fewer and fewer very rich and more relatively poor. The middle class has disappeared.
Yes. Romania also, you can see that not only European or civilized countries. It started.
No, it's not civilized. I was saying imperialist. Romania has never been an imperialist country.
Yes.
It's never been imperialist. So there's a way of dealing with it and keeping your freedom.
With dealing with the imperialism of others.
No. In other words, there is safety and quality of life and priority and so on. So Romanians aren't so easily slaves of the company.
Yeah, I get what you say.
Now they'll stay there.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean they'll work their butts out. They still privilege quality time, family, friends, eating healthy, etc., etc. They work hard, but even as a company, you could say a Romanian branch of an international company is relatively independent. The Romanians run it their own way, behind the scenes, even if there's a foreign CEO.
Yeah, especially if there's a foreign CEO.
Yeah, well, they can work with him and do what he wants and so on. But the energy
behind
will,
the scenes.
the energy will be elsewhere.
Which is both good and bad. I mean, it's bad. It's bad for the system that's just trying to keep them in good direction, but it's good for if you would move out of that kind of organizing structure and then you move into a more network kind of structure.
Well, if the whole company was different and less imperialist, etc., they could change. But why give an imperialist company more money and it doesn't to headquarters and spend stupidly when actually we're giving them enough money?
Yeah.
And here, Romanian branches deliver generally more than other countries in terms of ratios and so on. They're good. They could do 10 times more. Because it's not useful. And those companies don't recognize it.
You don't see the purpose in the.
They don't see the purpose. Now, if they manage the Romanian branch completely differently, they could probably teach headquarters something, in terms of dynamics and so on. Romanians are actually much freer and more creative. But they won't put their energy in something colonial. They don't know what it is. Never been subdued, really. by the Turks.
Yeah.
I'll give you the money you want, okay, on a regular basis. We'll give you soldiers. We'll give you little boys and little girls. And leave us alone.
Yeah.
So the model works very well.
Before we end this,
Yes.
if you could convey one message on a billboard to 1 billion people, like you have this billboard that is available to 1 billion people, what would you write?
That is much too big a question.
Yeah, I know. Put some effort in it.
No, but I mean, what would I write on that? In what terms? In other words, in terms of system,
In terms of what you would want to, from your experience, from everything,
Which is systems and relationships and everything that you live. What would you like to put out there as a short, crisp message?
you can take your time to think about it. I know it's not an easy question. It's from Tim Ferriss, just so you know. Yes, so you should.
the question?
Yes. He uses it all.
Oh, I think I don't know. In a way, I would say something systemic, which is it's all meant to be. Or what you are is what's you're meant to be. So do it well. In other words, it's meant to be. You can be fatalist. It's meant to be. That's not what I mean. In other words, you need to step into your tracks. You need to really step into your tracks. Because it's meant to be. It's your tracks. Now they're there.
Yeah.
They're there. And you need to do well.
So it's not just
It's not just follow ahead.
put energy into it.
Put energy into doing